Terran History Part 2 The New Home. The Atlas was installed into the first of the supercarriers, the Naglfar. Three other starships, the Argo, the Serengo and the Reagan, were programmed to follow Naglfar after his launch to the void of the space in the direction of the planet Gantry 6. Initially planned as a one-year trip, the expedition dragged on for many years. At some point during the flight, the Atlas navigation system failed, losing not only the coordinates of Gantry 6, but also the Earth. Four ships with passengers in the state of stasis wandered blindly through space at overlight speeds for nearly 30 years. Throughout this journey, which future generations will call the Long Sleep, Atlas kept a record of the human state immersed in cryogenic stasis. By evaluating numerous changes in the prisoners' gene pool, Atlas identified an unexpected mutation in their DNA. Although this new mutation occurred in less than 1% of the prisoners, it appeared to increase the latent psionic potential of the human brain. According to computer calculations, most prisoners who survive in the new environment will be able to use the benefits of this psionic mutation only after a few generations. These discoveries were written down and transmitted back to Earth, directly into the logs of Doran Routh. Eventually, the warp drive engines of the four supercarriers approached the critical melting point. After 28 years of warp travel, the huge ships returned to real space on the border of a habitable star system. At a distance of 60,000 light-years from Earth, the engines failed, and the resources of the life support system were practically exhausted. In accordance with the program of emergency actions, the ships headed towards the nearest habitable worlds in the system. The Reagan and the Serenga crash-landed on the world that would be named Umoja. The Serenga ship, which received extensive damage during the passage of low layers of the atmosphere, smashed into the planet. All 8,000 passengers died. The Reagan was more fortunate, making a controlled descent and a safe landing. After landing, their cold sleep chambers were deactivated, and the surviving passengers began to gradually wake up. Trying to find out how long they slept and where they had drifted, the passengers discovered that the Atlas system had somehow erased the details of their journey from the computer's database. The Argo landed upon the red planet of Moria. Its passengers met with the same fate of those aboard the Reagan. All information about their position was erased. Only Naglfar passengers could access their onboard computer and determine their location. They connected directly to the computer, and their growing suspicions that they would never see Earth again were confirmed. Although they landed on the temperate planet Tarsonis, the Naglfar ship was completely wrecked, and it was impossible to repair it. The surviving exiles settled in these three worlds began to save what was left of the wrecked ships, trying to find refuge in a new habitat. The inhabitants of each planet tried to survive in their so-called New World. Unaware that their comrades had succeeded in doing the same on other planets in the system, the wanderers from Earth used the scarce resources they could find. Having lost interplanetary means of communication, the Terrans, this term came to be applied to subsequent generations of colonists, lived in isolation for decades, as they dismantled their ships in search of vital materials. In a relatively short period of time, three isolated groups of Terrans established sister colonies on their worlds. And although the reunification of the three colonies, thanks to the possibility of space communication, will come only after 60 years, each of them has already turned into a prosperous, self-sufficient community. Second generation sub-warp engines were soon developed on Tarsonis, the largest and most technically advanced colony. This allowed their ships to explore the myriad barren planets of the surrounding star system, and eventually they found the other survivors of the Long Sleep. After their reunification, the three colonies came to mutually beneficial cooperation, concluding trade and commercial agreements. Although Tarsonis kept pushing Umoja and Moria to form a unified government, the proposal was firmly rejected by both colonies. The ships of Tarsonis continued to explore this new space sector, which later became known as the Koprulu sector. The founding of prosperous colonies upon 7 other worlds of this system allowed Tarsonis to develop military power at a rapid pace. A new government was formed by the Tarsonian colonies, called the Terran Confederacy. The Morian colony, which had prospered thanks to the sector's largest mineral exploitation, began to fear that the new Confederacy would try to take control of their lucrative mining operations. Therefore, the Kalmorian Combine was formed, a dubious corporation to provide military assistance to those mining guilds that were oppressed by Confederate policy. Tensions between the Confederacy and the Combine escalated, and finally a conflict broke out, which was called the Guild Wars. The Guild Wars continued for about 4 years. Eventually, the Confederacy forced the Combine into peace. Almost all of the mining guilds that supported it were attached to the Confederacy, although the Combine retained its autonomy. The Umojan colony, seeing the egregious abuses committed by the Confederate government, founded the Umojan Protectorate, a nationalized militia which would protect their colony's freedom from Confederate tyranny. The final result of the Guild Wars was that the Confederacy secured a dominant position in the Terran power structure. The might of the Confederacy grew over the years, while its prospectors conquered the worlds, pursuing a decisive expansionist policy. Increasingly, pirate groups and radical militia organizations began to raise their heads, as the Confederate enforcement agencies continued to oppress the civilian population. The greatest example of revolt against Confederate policy was the rebellion of Koprulu.